Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Week 15 weekly Facebook Live Bible Study. Last week, we introduced Judges. We talked about its main purpose and the cycle Israel find themselves in. We also introduced 1 Corinthians. We discussed some of the first problems that were described in the first half of the book, and we discussed Paul's reaction. Today, we're going to be concluding Judges by talking about Samson, God's hand and opinion on the matter, Micah, and the civil war Israel found itself in. We're also going to conclude 1 Corinthians by talking about the problems related to food, gathering, and resurrection. Let's dive into Judges. Now, Samson was the worst judge by far. He began full of promise, but however, he was very arrogant and violent, and he won battles over the Philistines, but at the expense of his integrity. His life ended in a very violent way. Now, God's Spirit empowers each of these judges to accomplish great acts of deliverance. The fact that God uses these people does not mean he endorses all or any of their choices. God is committing to saving his people, but all he has to work with are corrupt leaders. One can no longer tell the Israelites and Canaanites apart, and that's just the leaders. The final section focuses on Israel as a whole as they fall to rock bottom. In those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did what they thought was right. Micah built a private temple to an idol. This temple was then infiltrated by the tribe of Dan. These members of the tribe of Dan burned the city of Laish to the ground, murdering all life in that area. Israel's first civil war serves as a warning. Israel's path into self-destruction is a result of them turning away from God. Now they must be saved again, but this time it is not from Egypt or Canaan, but themselves. As the book of Judges comes to a close, we can see the stage of the following books be set up. The book of Judges points towards God's grace in sending a king who will rescue his people. That concludes Judges. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we ask that you post them and that we can grow together in Christ by addressing them. Now let's move on to 1 Corinthians. The three main problems in the second half of the book of 1 Corinthians is related to food, gathering, and the resurrection. Now the people were divided on the consumption of meat from animals that were sacrificed to Greek-Roman temples. This was mainly a disagreement between previous Jewish people who became converted into Christianity and Gentiles who then were converted into Christianity. But they all had different intakes on what should be done about this matter. But Paul clearly says that your allegiance is to Jesus, and that your loyalty is to him, and that you should love the people who Jesus died for, but be careful not to mislead them. Now, love is one of the big topics and themes of the second half of this book. Love is defined as denying yourself in order to look out for others. Paul says that since it's what Jesus did, it's what we should also do. Now, in terms of gathering, many people in the church were experiencing powerful spiritual experience. Now, this caused many confusions within the gatherings as people didn't know what this meant, and it caused a lot of disorder in the church. Paul says that if your worship is disorderly, drawing attention to yourself, then it is not correct worship. When you're worshiping in a gathering, you need to allow God's Spirit to work through everybody, and that the gathering should be unified and orderly. Paul also makes a statement of the church being as a body, in which he talks about the Spirit doing many things in the people to build up the church, and how the highest value to the gathering is God's love. Now, in terms of the resurrection, some people say that the idea was ridiculous. But Paul says we believe it because we have concrete evidence, and we would still be lost if Jesus simply died. Jesus is the life of source, and he is also our power source, and his resurrection gives unity and victory over death. One final piece of advice Paul gives in this section is about the gospel and its importance. He doesn't just say that the gospel isn't just mere advice, but it's the announcement of Jesus, and we shouldn't just disregard it. We should understand it and use it and apply it to our lives. That concludes 1 Corinthians. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we ask that you post them and that we can grow together in Christ by addressing them. Thank you.